Dr. Ethan Reeves pressed his palm against the reinforced viewport of Research Station Kepler-7, watching the twin suns of the Cerulean system paint the asteroid field in shades of amber and gold. 3 years of studying bioluminescent flora in this remote corner of space had taught him to appreciate beauty in the most unlikely places, but nothing had prepared him for her. "The phosphor kelp responds better to your cultivation techniques than ours," came the melodic voice behind him. Lyra's words carried the subtle harmonic undertones that marked her as cerulean nobility, each syllable flowing like water over river stones. Ethan turned, his breath catching, as it always did when he saw her. Lyra stood 7 feet tall, her translucent blue skin shimmering with internal light patterns that shifted with her emotions. Delicate gill slits along her elongated neck fluttered slightly in the station's humid atmosphere, and her large opalescent eyes held an intelligence that transcended species. "Human intuition," he replied, moving to the hydroponic tanks where alien sea plants swayed in their nutrient baths. "We don't always follow the data. Sometimes we just feel what the plants need." "Feeling," she repeated, the concept still foreign to her scientific upbringing. "Your species continues to fascinate me, Ethan Reeves." For 6 months, she had visited his lab as part of her diplomatic training, learning about interspecies collaboration. What began as formal exchanges about agricultural techniques had evolved into something neither of them had expected: long conversations that stretched past duty hours, shared meals where she taught him to appreciate cerulean cuisine while he introduced her to human music, and stolen moments where the barriers between their worlds seemed to dissolve. "There's something I need to tell you," Lyra said, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to deeper blues, a sign of distress he'd learned to read. "My father... High Admiral THA lost... He's arriving tomorrow for an inspection." Ethan's stomach clenched. Admiral Thylos commanded the Cerulean Third Fleet and served as military liaison to the Galactic Confederation. More importantly, he was Lyra's father, and their secret relationship would be seen as a catastrophic breach of protocol. "We knew this day would come," Ethan said quietly. "What do you want to do?" Lyra's skin flared with golden streaks, determination mixed with fear. "I want to tell him about us, about what we've discovered together. And if he orders me off the station, then I go with you?" Ethan moved closer. Careful not to touch her cerulean skin was hypersensitive, and even casual contact could be overwhelming. "Lyra, you're heir to the aquatic throne. You can't just, 'I can choose my own path,'" she interrupted, her voice carrying harmonics of steel beneath the melody. "Love isn't bound by biology or politics, Ethan. You taught me that." Outside the viewport, Chief Ramay Ortega drifted past in his maintenance pod, welding new support struts to the station's hull. The human mechanic's reputation preceded him, a miracle worker who could fix anything with ingenuity and stubbornness. Ethan wished his own problems could be solved so simply. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Ethan said, "I want you to know that these months with you have been the most meaningful of my life." Lyra's patterns shifted to warm gold, the cerulean equivalent of a smile. "Mine as well, beloved." As the twin suns set beyond the asteroid field, neither of them noticed the sleek cerulean dreadnought emerging from hyperspace, its hull bearing the personal insignia of High Admiral Thylos. Tomorrow would bring more than just an inspection. It would bring a test that would determine not only their future together, but their roles in a galaxy on the brink of war. High Admiral Thylos moved through Research Station Kepler-7 like a force of nature, his massive frame even larger than his daughter's, casting imposing shadows in the narrow corridors. His ceremonial armor gleamed with bioluminescent command stripes that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and his retinue of cerulean officers followed in perfect formation. Ethan stood at attention beside Director Chun, the station's human administrator, as the inspection party entered the main laboratory. His hands trembled slightly as he watched Lyra accompany her father, her bioluminescent patterns carefully neutral, a diplomatic mask he'd never seen her wear before. "Impressive work, Dr. Reeves," Admiral Thalos said, his voice carrying the deep resonance of command. "Your hybrid cultivation techniques have increased crop yields by 37% across our outer colonies." "Thank you, Admiral. It's been an honor working with your daughter. Ambassador Lyra has provided invaluable insights into cerulean agricultural methods." Something flickered in the Admiral's massive eyes' amusement, perhaps, or calculation. "Indeed. Lyra speaks very highly of your ... collaboration." Director Chun stepped forward nervously. "Admiral, if you'd like to review the quarterly reports, that won't be necessary." Thalos raised a webbed hand, his attention fixed on Ethan. "Dr. Reeves, I'd like to speak with you privately." The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan's throat went dry as he followed the towering alien into an empty conference room. Through the transparent walls, he could see Lyra pacing anxiously, her skin flashing distress patterns. "Sit," Thalos commanded, his bulk settling into a chair designed for cerulean physiology. "My daughter believes herself subtle, but I've been reading bioluminescent emotions for 2 centuries. Her patterns change when she speaks of you, Dr. Reeves. They change in ways I've never seen before." Ethan forced himself to meet the Admiral's gaze. "Sir, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain how a human botanist has managed to capture the heart of the future ruler of Cherulia Prime? Can you explain why my daughter speaks of abandoning her duties for a life among the stars with you?" The words cut deep. Ethan had never asked Lyra to sacrifice anything for him, but the truth was clear in her father's accusation. "I love her," Ethan said simply, "and I believe she loves me. Everything else is secondary." To his surprise, Thalos began to laugh a sound like distant thunder. "Everything else is secondary," spoken like a true human. "Do you know why I came here personally, Dr. Reeves? To end our relationship? To offer you a choice." The Admiral's expression grew serious. "The Void Horde has broken through the Rigel defense line. 17 systems have gone dark in the past month. The Confederation's finest tacticians are baffled. These creatures consume everything organic, leaving only dead rock behind." Ethan's blood chilled. The Void Horde was the stuff of nightmares, an extra-dimensional swarm that devoured life itself. "What does this have to do with everything?" Thalos leaned forward. "You understand ecosystems, Dr. Reeves. You see connections that pure military minds miss. I need that perspective in my fleet. You're drafting me? I'm offering you a chance to prove yourself worthy of my daughter." The Admiral's patterns shifted to predatory gold. "Serve under my command. Face the same dangers as my soldiers. Show me that your love is stronger than your fear, and perhaps, I'll consider your suit for Lyra's hand." Ethan stared at the alien commander, realizing the trap he'd walked into. "And if I refuse?" "Then you return to Earth, and Lyra fulfills her duty to marry the cerulean noble the Council has chosen for her." Through the transparent wall, Ethan could see Lyra watching them, her entire body rippling with anxiety. Chief Ortega floated past. Outside, still working on hull repairs, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside, the choice was no choice at all. "When do I report for duty?" Ethan asked. Admiral Thalos smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Immediately. Welcome to the 47th Reconnaissance Battalion, Dr. Reeves. I hope you survive long enough to earn what you seek." The cerulean dreadnought abyssal current was a marvel of bioengineering, its living hull pulsing with neural networks that responded to the crew's thoughts. Ethan stood in the cramped quarters he'd been assigned, struggling to don the adaptive armor that would keep him alive in alien environments. The suit's biogel lining felt uncomfortably warm against his skin, and the neural interface tingled at the base of his skull. "You're holding it wrong," came a gruff voice from the doorway. Ethan turned to see Chief Raymay Ortega leaning against the frame, tool belt hanging loose around his waist. The mechanic's weathered face bore the scars of 100 repair jobs, and his coveralls were permanently stained with exotic lubricants. "Raymay, what are you doing here? Same as you, probably." Admiral Thalos has a reputation for collecting useful humans. Ortega stepped forward and adjusted Ethan's armor seals with practiced efficiency. "Heard you got yourself tangled up with his daughter. Bold move, Doc." "It wasn't a move. It just happened. Love usually does." Raymay's grin was sardonic. "Course. Falling for alien royalty while the galaxy's going to hell? That's some timing." A harmonic chime echoed through the ship battle stations. Ethan's stomach lurched as artificial gravity shifted, the abyssal current dropping out of hyperspace into chaos. The bridge was a cathedral of bioluminescent displays, with Admiral Thalos at its center like an ancient sea god. Cerulean officers moved in fluid coordination, their patterns creating a light show of tactical communication. Ethan tried to stay out of the way as Lyra approached him, her armor gleaming with diplomatic insignia. "I should have warned you about Father's methods," she said, her patterns tight with concern. "He tests everyone he considers recruiting." "Tests?" Before she could answer, the main display lit up with the horror they faced. The Kepler colony, a thriving agricultural world Ethan had helped design, was being consumed. Massive insectoid shapes swarmed across the surface like a living carpet, stripping away forests, cities, and life itself. In space, void horde bioships resembled diseased organs, pulsing with malevolent energy. 17 Confederation ships lost in 3 hours, reported Commander Nexus, the tactical officer. Their weapons simply passed through the enemy vessels. "Admiral." Thalos studied the display, his patterns dark with frustration. "Dr. Reeves, step forward." Ethan felt every eye on the bridge turn to him. "Sir, you designed the agricultural systems for Kepler colony. What am I looking at?" Ethan studied the feed, his botanical training taking over despite his fear. "They're not just consuming the life forms, they're disrupting the entire ecosystem. Look at the pattern of their advance. They're following the mycorrhizal networks." "The what?" demanded Commander Nexus. "Fungal root systems that connect all plant life underground. It's like the planet's nervous system." Ethan moved to the display, his hands shaking as he manipulated the data. "They're not just eating randomly. They're targeting the connections that hold the ecosystem together." "And this helps us how?" Admiral Thalos asked. "Because every network has nodes, critical junction points. If we could identify where they're going to strike next ... Ethan's voice trailed off as he realized what he was suggesting. "We could set a trap," the Admiral finished. His patterns shifted to Hunter's gold. "Commander Nexus, prepare the fleet for close-range engagement. Dr. Reeves, you'll accompany the strike team." "Father, no." Lyra's patterns flared with alarm. "He's not trained for combat." "Then he'll learn quickly," Thalos replied coldly. "Chief Ortega, I want you to keep our xenobotanist alive long enough to be useful." Raymay spat into a recycling unit. "Can do, Admiral. Been keeping pretty things alive for years." As alarms began to sound and the crew prepared for battle, Ethan realized that Admiral Thalos hadn't just drafted him into the army, he'd thrown him directly into the fire to see. If he'd burn or forge into something stronger through the chaos of preparation, he caught Lyra's eye. Her pattern spoke of love and terror in equal measure, and he knew that surviving the coming battle was about more than proving himself to her father. It was about living long enough to build the future they dreamed of among the stars. Asterisk, they Assault Shuttle Deep Current screamed through Kepler colony's atmosphere, its biohull shuddering under defensive fire from Void Horde ground positions. Ethan gripped his restraints as the craft bucked and rolled, trying not to lose his breakfast while studying tactical displays that showed the planet's dying ecosystem. 2 minutes to landing zone, shouted Lieutenant Kala, the Cerulean squad, leader whose bioluminescent scars marked her as a veteran of a dozen campaigns. Remember, humans were here to place sensor beacons at the mycorrhizal nodes. Dr. Reeves guides us, we protect him. Simple. Chief Ortega snorted from his position, near the shuttle's rear hatch, where he'd been jury-rigging additional power feeds to their equipment. Nothing simple when you're fighting bugs that eat reality, Lieutenant. The shuttle touched down in what had once been a thriving research station, Ethan's own secondary laboratory, now partially consumed by the advancing Void Horde. Twisted. Metal and organic matter merged in impossible ways, creating structures that hurt to look at directly. Movement, 3 o'clock. Corporal Zeph raised his plasma rifle as chitinous shapes skittered through the ruins. The Void Horde drones resembled a nightmare fusion of insect and machine, their carapaces shifting between dimensions as they moved. Hold fire, Ethan said, studying his botanical scanner. They're following the root network exactly like I predicted. The main node should be ... He paused, checking his readings. 200 meters north in the old greenhouse complex. The squad moved out in formation, with Ethan at the center and Ortega bringing up the rear. The mechanic had somehow modified his maintenance tools into improvised weapons, including a welding torch that seemed to disrupt the void creature's dimensional phasing. How'd you figure that out? Ethan asked, as Ramai casually sliced through a drone that materialized beside them. Saw something similar on the mining rigs near Proxima, Ortega replied, not breaking stride. Turns out these extra-dimensional types don't like concentrated electromagnetic fields. Messes with their phase variance. They reached the greenhouse. Complex to find it transformed into something from a fever dream. The Void Horde had partially consumed the structure, leaving behind twisted frameworks that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. At the center, a massive fungal network node pulsed with dark energy as void creatures fed from it. That's it, Ethan whispered. They're not just eating the plants, they're corrupting the entire network. If we can't stop them here, they'll be able to spread to every connected system instantaneously. The sensor beacon won't work in this interference, Lieutenant Kala reported, her patterns showing deep concern. The corruption is too advanced. Ethan stared at the writhing mass of consumed vegetation, his scientific mind racing. What if we don't try to place a beacon? What if we turn the network against them? Explain, Kala demanded. Every ecosystem has natural antifungal agents compounds that prevent one species from dominating the others. If I can synthesize the right biological cocktail and introduce it directly into the node ... You'd poison the entire network, Ortega realized. Kill the planet to save it. Not kill rebalance. The network would recover, but anything feeding directly from it ... Ethan's voice trailed off as the implications hit him. Would be forcibly ejected from this dimension? Lieutenant Kala finished. Can you synthesize these compounds? I'd need access to my lab equipment, and time I don't have. Ethan looked around desperately, then his gaze fell on Ortega's toolkit. Unless ... Oh no, the mechanic said. I know that look. That's the same look you had when you wanted to crossbreed Terran wheat with Centaurian mold. You're electromagnetic. Disruptor, if I can modify it to carry a biological payload instead of just disrupting their phase variance. You want to turn my welding torch into a bioweapon. I want to turn your welding torch into a vaccine delivery system. Around them, more void creatures were emerging from the corrupted network, their forms becoming more solid as they fed. The squad's plasma fire was having minimal effect, and their retreat route was rapidly being cut off. "Do it," Lieutenant Kala ordered. "Corporal Zeph, defensive perimeter. Chief Ortega, give the human whatever he needs." As Ethan began frantically modifying the welding torch with compounds from his field kit, he realized that this was exactly what Admiral Phalos had intended. Not just a test of courage, but a proving ground where human ingenuity could complement cerulean military precision. The question was whether they'd all live long enough to see if his desperate gambit would work. Asterisk. Sound of approaching void creatures grew louder, and time was running out. Asterisk, asterisk. The modified welding torch hummed with unstable energy as Ethan calibrated the bio-payload mixture, his hands steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Void horde creatures swarmed through the greenhouse complex, their dimensional forms becoming increasingly solid as they fed from the corrupted fungal network. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Lieutenant Kala shouted, her plasma rifle cutting down a drone that had materialized behind Corporal Zeph. "We're getting overrun." Chief Ortega crouched beside Ethan, his makeshift weapons holding back another wave of attackers. "Doc, that thing's gonna blow up in your face if you push the power coupling any higher." "It has to work," Ethan muttered, making final adjustments. "The antifungal compounds need to penetrate at least 50 meters into the network to be effective." He looked up at the massive, pulsing node at the center of the greenhouse. "I need to get closer." "Negative," Kala snapped. "Too dangerous." "If I can't deliver the payload directly to the primary node, we're all dead anyway." Ethan stood, the modified torch heavy in his hands. "This is what Admiral Phalos wanted, isn't it? To see if I'd run when things got difficult?" Before anyone could stop him, he sprinted toward the center of the complex. Void creatures converged on him from all sides, their chitinous forms shifting between dimensions. The air itself seemed to writhe with malevolent energy as he pushed deeper into their feeding territory. A massive drone materialized directly in his path, its compound eyes fixed on him with alien hunger. Ethan raised the torch and fired, the modified beam striking the creature's center mass. Instead of simply disrupting its phase variance, the biological payload spread through its form like fire, causing it to convulse and dissolve back into whatever dimension it had emerged from. "It works!" he shouted, reaching the base of the fungal node. The network towered above him, a twisted mass of corrupted vegetation that pulsed with dark energy. He could feel the malevolent intelligence behind the void horde's consumption ancient, hungry and utterly alien. Ethan pressed the torch's emitter directly against the node's surface and triggered the full payload release. The antifungal compounds raced through the network like wildfire, and the effect was immediate. Void creatures throughout the complex began convulsing, their connection to the network severed by the biological disruption. But the node was fighting back. Tendrils of corrupted tissue erupted from its surface, wrapping around Ethan's legs and arms. He could feel the void horde's hunger trying to consume him directly, to add his biological patterns to their collective. "Not today," he growled, triggering the torch's emergency overload. The electromagnetic pulse that followed didn't just disrupt the creatures. Phase variance had ignited the antifungal compounds already in the network, creating a chain reaction that spread for kilometers in every direction. The explosion threw Ethan backward as the entire greenhouse complex collapsed around him. Through the chaos, he could see void creatures dissolving like smoke, their connection to this dimension severed by the biological weapon he'd created. When the dust settled, Lieutenant Kala and her squad found him buried under debris, unconscious but alive. Chief Ortega used his tools to carefully extract him from the wreckage, muttering about humans and their tendency toward heroic stupidity. 3 days later, Ethan woke up in the medical bay of the abyssal current to find Lyra sitting beside his bed, her bioluminescent patterns showing relief and love in equal measure. "The network worked," she said softly. "The antifungal compounds are spreading through 12 connected systems. The void horde is retreating on all fronts." "And your father?" Impressed, despite himself, Lyra's patterns shifted to gentle amusement. "He says anyone crazy enough to turn a welding torch into a bioweapon while being attacked by extra-dimensional parasites has proven his worthiness beyond question." Admiral Phalos entered the medical bay at that moment, his massive form somehow less intimidating than before. "Dr. Reeves, or should I say, Lieutenant Reeves? Your commission came through this morning." "Thank you, sir. But I think I'd prefer to remain a scientist." "Good. The Confederation needs more warriors who think like scientists." The Admiral's patterns showed something that might have been respect. "As for your personal situation, Lyra has made her choice clear. And after what you accomplished on Kepler Colony, I find myself inclined to respect that choice." Ethan looked at Lyra, seeing his own hope reflected in her opalescent eyes. "Does this mean?" "It means," Admiral Phalos said, with what passed for a smile among his species, "that you've proven love can indeed transcend both biology and protocol. But first, we have a war to win. Chief Ortega is already working on mass-producing your biotorches. It seems the galaxy has found its secret weapon against the Void Horde." As Ethan reached for Lyra's hand, feeling the electric tingle of contact between their species, he realized that Admiral Phalos had given him more than just a test. He'd given him a purpose that could unite both his scientific calling and his duty to protect the woman he loved. The stars outside the viewport beckoned with infinite possibility, and for the first time since this adventure began, Ethan was ready to face whatever came next. Asterisk.